Welcome to the Art and Hustle podcast, a gallery of conversations, a space where you can hear all the amazing stories and life lessons of my guests. I'm your host, Linda fashion designer turned multimedia artist, and I want to give you a space to tell your story.
All right, now, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
I am honored and flattered that you want to do more than one podcast with me. That's number
Oh,
one.
well,
Okay.
I'm honored that you want to speak to me again.
Well, I'm going to tell you what this is. I'm 76, and two of my closest friends who were my age, we were within weeks of each other. They both died. Okay, and
Wow.
I'm thinking, they're proof of my what I've always said to students over the years, and that is that most of life is luck.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
Oh,
either good luck or bad luck. We have no control. Control in this world is really an illusion. And the philosophers will tell you that all the time. We really don't control much, especially in terms of our own bodies and especially in terms of living or not living. So, I mean, that's why it's a horrible thing that, you know, kids at 10 years old die of leukemia. In other words, people make it to 95. You know what I'm saying? It's just,
hmm,
there's a lot of luck involved. Okay.
yeah.
There's a lot of other this, and there's genetics and there's medical technology, blah, blah, blah. But
Hmm.
I'm at a point now where, um, I've always been a talker, but people say, well, why do you want to talk, so much? I said, well, I've always had a lot to say, number one. And I think that I learned stuff while I was here on the planet.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to share it it's because I think that sometimes people are not living life to the fullest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I totally agree.
yeah, I think I have. I mean, because I've done stuff that most, when I first went got the job at Central ISO, I was 22, whatever it was. And I looked around me, and most of the teachers, even the younger ones, males especially, they had married their high school or college sweetheart. They had their 2.5 kids and a big mortgage,
Yeah.
and they were hunched over looking old, and they were 27, 28, 30.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of the ones who had been athletes, especially football players, they were literally crippled. They had
Wow.
bad knees, bad ankles, things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, geez, I'm pretty fit and I'm pretty, having a great time. But in other words, they went to college, got married, kids, and then they had their hobbies here and there. But meanwhile, I was still actively surfing, riding my horse,
Yeah.
traveling as a single person. I mean, I
Getting
was
tan,
What's that? What's that? Yeah,
having a
getting
tan,
tan.
getting
Really.
tan.
And I always was chipper. I had a smile on my face, a song in my heart.
Yeah.
And I think that was interesting for the young people because I was a teacher who was kind of, they always say to me, well, you don't look like a teacher. And
Yeah.
you know,
You're
and,
not angry and mad and
and depressed
unhappy. Yeah.
and yeah,
Depressed. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not worried about bills. I'm not worried about the health of my children. I
Yeah.
mean, there were reasons. And by the way, I had great respect for those teachers who did make those choices. I mean, life is choices. You make the
Yeah.
choices you want to make. That's fine. I chose not to have kids. I said, hey, in this life, I've got one life to live, and I want it to be mine. I didn't want to have to say, okay, I'm going to live my life for kids. I
Yeah.
never had the urge to have kids.
Yeah.
Um, and plus, I used to tell students way back, especially I guess I got midway through my career,
Mhm.
I couldn't claim to be Peter Pan, in their age if I had children. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, I could no longer play with the lost children
Yeah.
and have fun. And it was. There were a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Plus, I have to say, I didn't. I had a really kind of a good childhood and things like that.
Hmm.
But I always found family to be a real imposition on my freedom. Okay.
Hmm.
So, for example, if I didn't, I remember one time I got into a lot of trouble because my aunt was having a big anniversary party. Her and her husband, and I loved them. They were great people. They
Yeah.
treated me with a lot of affection. But anyway, I didn't show up because the surf was up, and I didn't. I just kept surfing.
You gotta
And I
catch
said,
that wave.
"That's it. This is it. The surf is not always good, especially on Long Island. It's when it's good, it's going to be really good.
I
But
mean, like surfing in itself is like being with nature. That's like, that's a whole
it,
religious
oh, it
experience
is.
in
It's
itself, right?
probably the most spiritual episodes or periods of my life or days in my life was when I was either surfing, especially when I was alone, the first couple hours where before people came down, that and or riding my horse through the woods all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just showboy and me, and we'd see. I mean, we'd see all kinds of animals. I once saw a big old owl scare the crap out of me because those birds are huge, right? But I mean, it was one of those things. And then of course when I would see deer and stuff, and the deer wouldn't run off because his uh, odor covered the human odor. And so when I rode, they were smelling him, and he was just another big mammal,
Yeah.
really kind of cool. But anyway, we didn't come to talk about this. We could the topic of this
Oh,
particular
yes. Today's topic. Yes.
right, and I think this is good if we have a topic, and really it's
Mhm.
about book banning and censorship.
Yes.
And this is something that I'm very familiar with, not
Yeah.
because I was a teacher, and
Hmm.
not because if I didn't have the First Amendment when I was teaching and with what I was teaching, I would have been in jail a long time ago. Okay, especially when you have these modern, I hate to say
Hmm.
this,
Hmm.
but you have a lot of right-wing Republican,
Hmm.
neo-fascist, racist people, and they're trying to take over schools. They want to really part of the thing with censorship, and we'll get into it in book banning, is that trying to find reasons to privatize schools, and what
Oh,
they're going to eventually like to do is they're going to teach the history
that
that
they
they want.
want to teach.
Exactly. And these same Republicans, when they were talking about the anti-Muslim stuff, oh, the Muslim have a madrasas and they're brainwashing their kids on Islam and radical Islam. Well, they want to do the same exact things. I mean, so they're hypocrites. I mean, that's part of the thing. But the reason why I'm into this stuff is not only because of my being a teacher of English and literature,
The
it's because
library.
the library. I'm
Yeah.
president of the board of trustees of our public library.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And in fact, our library is called the North Shore Public Library, and it covers the towns of Shoring, Wading River, Rocky Point, parts of Riverhead, parts of Miller Place, and parts of Sound Beach. So it's really a North Shore
Yeah.
area that we cover. We have about 33 to 35,000 registered patrons. And it's my job and the Board of Trustees' job, as far as I'm concerned, is to make sure that our real job is to create and enforce library policies. Okay. And the way it works is that the only trustee that deals directly with the library director, she runs the show. Okay. We could hire and fire her
Yeah.
for cause, but she hires and fires everybody else.
Hmm.
Okay. And the two of us I've been now on the library. I guess I've been trustee for about 18 years and 17 and a half as president. Okay. And the good news is that she and I don't butt heads too much because we're on the same page about the First Amendment and about book banning and about no censorship. And by the way, not all libraries and librarians across the country are like that. And more are rolling over and playing dead to these to the right wing mob, intimidating them to say, take this book off the shelf and put this book. I mean, it's really very sad. Okay, so this is basically now becoming more and more of an issue. Now we haven't faced it yet.
Hmm.
Others have.
Oh,
Certain,
okay.
yeah, certain libraries have already are facing it. They want
Really?
to put certain books on. Yeah, oh
Oh,
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, and of course, I'm aware of the fact that they want to hide, especially I hate to say this, but you know it to be true because you went to I'm getting the thing, the internet connection is unstable, but mine looks to be
yeah.
pretty good.
Hmm.
Uh, okay, anyway, so uh, they don't want the white supremacists in this country do not want to have students know about racial history. And
Hmm.
the stupidest comment I have ever heard recently, you have to be dumb as a door to say this as a parent or as an educator.
Yeah.
Here it is. Well, I don't want my student or my child to feel uncomfortable. If they hear stuff about other races, it'll make them feel uncomfortable because, about white people, killing and lynching black people. And I'm thinking, excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is what a good teacher, a good philosopher does with people is to make them uncomfortable, get them out of their comfort zone, out of their family or societal bubble, and start thinking about other kinds of stuff so they could be free thinking, really independent
Yeah,
individuals. And
exactly.
I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know what I said when you were my student, but I probably said a lot of things that which in retrospect were probably outrageous.
Well, that's why, even though you didn't have kids, I feel like all your students are your kids because you have a tremendous amount of students that respect you for being outspoken and being the person you are, testing the waters and telling them like it is.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I wanted them to feel, and I've said it to probably in the first podcast or so. Um, I wanted them to understand that I was on their side.
Yeah.
A lot, a lot of adults are not on the side of kids in the sense that they don't want to say certain things to them or want them to hear certain things because they think, well, if they do it, if they hear it, then they're going to do it. So, for example, if they say, as I said, guess what, class? Sex is a good thing. It
Mhm.
feels good, okay? It feels good. And it's supposed to feel good, otherwise the race would die. We'd be all be extinct, okay? The issue isn't that it's bad. No, it's not a sin.
Yeah.
Okay, forget that. No, those are religious nonsense about, oh, sex is a sin. Meanwhile, you read the Bible, it's all about sex all the way through. So, so that's a whole. We'll get into that too.
Yeah,
But the
that'd be
fact,
another day's topic, right?
no, no, we can fit that. We can. No, we'll fit that in today. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say to you is that. But then my issue would be okay. It's good. It's supposed to feel good. Okay. I'm going to tell this to you that I don't know that I actually said it. I may have said it in my
Probably
college.
did. I think you probably
I
did
probably
because
well
yeah, it
okay.
probably goes along with like Betty Lou stories.
Well, yeah, yeah, but I would always paraphrase uh, the modern poet Gertrude Stein, and she said, "A rose is a rose is a rose," and I would say, "An orgasm is an orgasm, is an orgasm." In other words, it, it is what it is,
Yeah,
and it's supposed to be what it is.
yeah,
And roses are beautiful and sweet smelling and lovely, and they're a great wonder of nature. Okay,
yeah,
and so is sex.
yeah,
Okay, I mean it's about a whole thing. You
yeah,
say it's a beautiful thing,
yeah.
but the key is, and that's where the maturity and adult part came in for me as an adult instructor. Okay,
Hmm.
my job was to say, okay, so let me preach now responsibility,
Hmm.
tenderness.
Yeah,
You don't abuse women. But also you have to make sure that sex is safe. Okay.
yeah, hmm,
When I was an adolescent and a young man, we didn't have all these horrible diseases that we have now.
yeah.
Okay. Um, we also, for example, I'm trying to think. Yeah, we didn't. Abortion was not legal yet when I was a teenager. Most of the women who got abortions had to go to France, Puerto Rico, any place where it was legal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, the problem with that was you had to have money, and a lot of the women who were not well off couldn't get them, or they
Hmm.
did back alley abortions where they were dying
Yeah,
from
which was
sepsis.
unsafe, and then you
Yeah,
know.
and this is the horror. I grew up reading all kinds of articles every day in the
Yeah,
local paper here, Newsday on Long Island,
yeah.
about women who were dying, and they had them. I mean,
Ooh.
I remember it was terrifying to me. I was a young man saying, "Well, why are these poor women dying?"
Yeah, yeah.
But so then when they made abortion legal, all of a sudden those kinds of articles ceased to,
Hmm.
to be.
Hmm.
Now what's going to happen is it's going to go back to the old ways, and until people lose a lot of their loved ones, their daughters and wives and stuff, well, maybe it'll change again.
Yeah.
But at any rate, the point is that telling the truth of stuff, okay, it's become a harder and harder thing to do.
Hmm.
Okay, they
Hmm.
don't want a lot of truth. For example, one of the things that I learned right away was about textbook publishing.
Mm.
Okay, because now we're talking about into the topic of real censorship. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I forget when it was, but I found out that the preponderance of textbooks were being published and like Texas, which is a very large state, they
Yeah.
had way more than most other states had to say about what was going into textbooks. Okay,
Mm. Hmm.
they had a huge student population, and there were certain things they did not want to hear. And certain, of course, Texas tends to be a lot less liberal, at least it was at the time. So,
Yeah.
for example, they didn't want to have certain positive things mentioned even about a president like Thomas Jefferson because they felt liberal. Okay. And so, which I'm thinking, so they would add, but they would say, well, we want to talk about some of the textbooks that talk more about our uh, Texas heroes and legislators, things like that. Let me give you a perfect example of
Crazy.
what of how people believe a story, okay, and they all think it's true, all right, and a lot of it's not quite as true as they like to think. This Texas, the Alamo, you know the Alamo. Remember the Alamo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the way they tell it, the people in the Alamo were defending Texas because it wasn't a state yet. I think it was still a territory.
Yeah.
And of course, we all grew up. My generation grew up watching the Walt Disney version of Davy Crockett. He was the
Mm.
Davy coonskin cap and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was had been a legislator for a while, I think in Tennessee. Anyway, so he's there manning the battlements. Jim Bowie of the Bowie knife and fame. But here's the problem there. They depict them as the great heroes, defending
Oh.
the Alamo and defending Texas. Well, guess what? They were fighting the Mexicans, but the Mexicans, they had, I guess, I had a relatively recent, government, national government, and they passed laws abolishing slavery. Okay, abolishing slavery.
Oh,
So
wow.
what were the Texans doing at the Alamo? They
Yeah.
were in fact defending the Texas territorial right to own slaves and
Oh.
also all the antebellum, the pre-Civil War
Mm-hmm.
uh, cultural aspects of the South.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, if you care about race relations, you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
well, wait a second. These guys weren't necessarily heroes. They were basically, I don't. I'm trying to. I can't. I don't want to call them what I really think I should call them.
You can call
But
them what you're at the
well, no, I
age you
just
can
think
say whatever you want.
I just think this. They represented something very, very negative in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're, they weren't abolitionists. They were protecting the notion of slavery in Texas. And by the way, you can look this up. This is
Yeah.
my opinion. I mean, believe
Yeah.
me, I'm not. When I speak to students, I research, I prepare.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're a lawyer.
Well, basically, you always try to remind me. See, now you sound like my mother because she wanted me to be a lawyer.
Well, that I know. I just find it funny. No, because you know the facts. You're gonna do your research, and then
Well,
you're gonna
yeah,
present
yeah,
it. And
but I was trying to
yeah.
teach that to you guys. I was trying to teach
Yeah.
that to students. I wanted them to, research,
Yeah.
and then be logical and come to conclusions based on
Exactly.
that logic. And the logic means you needed to have facts. Now the
Yeah.
problem, we have a culture where people doing those, they believe in all kinds of nonsense, and they say, well, this is fact. Well,
Yeah.
no, it's not fact that Hillary Clinton was running a pedophile ring out of a pizzeria. I mean, no, that's bullshit. That's not fact.
Yeah.
Okay, and people, but yet there are people who in the QAnon types believe that stuff. There are some of them who believe that Trump was the best president this country ever had. Well, no, he was a criminal. He's a traitor to this country. He tried to steal. Was trying to kill democracy so he could be basically his own little dictator. Okay, and that's why he was a friend with Putin, and that's why Putin didn't invade with when Trump was president because he didn't have to.
Yeah.
Trump was trying to kill NATO. He was anti-democratic. I mean, all these different things. So Putin goes, well, I've got my asset here, my Russian asset in America. He's doing stuff for me. Now that Trump is gone, and Biden is saying, well, no, we're not palsy-walsy with you.
Mhm.
You could say, well, I have to invade now because I didn't get what well I want. He wanted Putin wanted NATO gone. Trump was looking to kill it. I mean,
Wow.
this is a problem. And then Trump also unleashed the genie out of the bottle for racism and
Hmm.
xenophobia
Yeah.
and all kinds of. I was just reading an article the other day about how much damage that Trump and Trumpism has done in terms of race relations in this country. Okay, and
Yeah.
I think that you probably know all about that, and more people are starting to realize it. Okay, and of course, I know one of the things I've always said about Central Islip, and by the way, this is a shout out to Gary O'Valley
Yes.
interview. Okay,
Hmm.
shout out to him because he said things at the beginning with which I totally not only agreed. I mean, I always felt, and I used to say that Central Islip, that Central Islip experience
Yeah.
was the multicultural
Yep.
experiment that worked.
It was
because so many
it was
students, right?
beautiful. It was a beautiful environment, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't grow up in that multicultural environment. You know, so
Yes, think of all the friends that you probably still have today, and then you
yeah.
had when you were in school that were different colors than you,
Yep. Yep.
different religions than you.
Hmm.
I mean, it was a beautiful. It was like I remember. I think the class your sister was in. I think I
Yep.
told you before. It was like
Hmm.
having a mini UN meeting. I
Yeah,
mean, I had
totally.
Asian kids and black kids and Latino
Hmm.
kids
Yep.
and Muslims, and I mean it was an amazing class. The conversations were spectacular,
Hmm.
interesting, profound,
Yeah, intellectual.
mature.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but the problem is, most people, like I live in Wading River,
Yeah.
Illinois, and here's another thing that most people in Wading River don't get. And by the way, it's predominantly white. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, usually there are a couple of black people in here.
Yeah.
I rarely see them, but that was the whole point. Look, that was the whole point. People moved to Wading River in the first place. Okay, I hate to say it. Okay,
Yeah.
but what they don't realize is that Wading River, Eastern Wading River, Western River, whatever the boundary were close, had a very active Ku Klux Klan meeting house.
Wow.
Okay, and that was active until just before World War II.
Hmm.
Again, you can look it up. Okay, so the point is the residue of that
Yeah.
is still here in this area because there's a lot of still a lot of look. I think most of the people here, like a lot of white people, are polite to people of color, but what they really feel is, well, I don't really need to have them
Yeah,
in
that's
my life.
probably how they feel.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Classic story, I'll never
Yeah.
forget it. One of my black students says to me, this is back in the 60s, okay? I think it was even before all of the real, it was just before or around the civil rights movement in this country. So he says to me, I'm going to, well, you know, so I said, what are you doing for your summer vacation? I think he was a junior. And he goes, well, I'm going to go down south, someplace way south, what I would have considered a real racist place in the south. He goes, and he said, yeah, I'm going to go down there for the summer.
Yeah.
I said, excuse me. I said, if I were you,
Hmm.
okay, given your color and everything else, I wouldn't probably go. I probably wouldn't go any farther south than Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
Oh my God.
So he laughed, and then he says to me something which I've never forgotten. He goes, "Look," he said, you white liberals up here." He goes, "It's one thing." He said, "But when I go down south, people let me know exactly how they feel about me as a black person, good or bad."
Yeah.
He said, "But up here, the white liberal types will sometimes, or any white person they'll shake my hand, blah blah
Oh,
blah. But
and
meanwhile,
pretend.
they'll pretend and they'll stab me in the back when I turn around. You see,
Mm.
so he had this really healthy
View.
paranoia, if you will,
Oh, okay. Mhm.
I don't want to say paranoia is too strong, but he had this really healthy understanding of, what, I, uh, the honesty of a racist white person
Yeah.
made more sense to him, I think, or made him
Mhm.
feel more, I don't want to say comfortable, but it certainly made him know where he stood,
Yeah. Like he'd rather know up front if you like me or
That's right.
not, then I don't need to deal with you if you don't like me, and I'll just move on. Hmm.
Exactly right.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but going back to these things, but what they don't tell you, okay, but what they don't want you to know in history. I mean, for example, uh, there's always been this tendency for book banning and censorship.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, the first ever English translation of the New Testament, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
what they did was they were, I guess at the time, I think it was, I forget what year it was, but it was back, I don't know, 15, 1600s, whatever. Uh, Here's what they did. They basically, outlawed it, and then they executed the translator. All right. So you would think, well, okay, if you have this, you've now made this Bible more easy for people to read, especially in
Hmm.
English.
Yeah.
They said, well, we don't like this translation for what it said, and then they execute the translator. I mean, so book burning, book banning,
Yeah.
execution, and by the way, I grew up as a Catholic, okay, especially when I was in university, learning about the Catholic Index of Prohibited Books, okay. That
Oh,
was it
okay.
was called capital
Yeah.
I, capital P, capital B, in the
Hmm.
index, which still exists today,
That
Okay, it's
I'm sure you read all of them, right?
well, now you laugh. I'm going to tell you this. You want the truth? I know I made a comment once that some of my students have never forgotten. I once made a comment. There was somebody made a negative comment about books or reading or something. I said, "Excuse me,
Mhm.
I have read more. I have forgotten more books than you'll ever read." And I remember the girl who said it to me, and she laughed. But what I was going to say about the index of prohibited books, most of the people who are Catholics who don't read much, they think that somehow those books on the index are prohibited because of sexual stuff.
Oh,
Okay. There's a couple, but they're predominantly prohibited because the Catholic Church felt that they were heretical, that they were not towing the Catholic theological line.
oh,
You
okay.
have a lot of great philosophers like,
So they weren't following the program of what the Bible was trying to push.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So what was the point of
Yeah,
the index? Well, they didn't want Catholics to read those books to learn that there was a different view of the theology that
yeah.
The Catholic priesthood was espousing, right?
So they don't want people to think for themselves. They don't want people to question.
That's right. That's right. And so, and of course, this also leads to what's the big issue? The issue is that the groups who are censoring,
Yeah,
right?
huge issue.
Yeah, it's control. It's about
Yeah,
control.
control. It's control.
Yeah, you
Control,
don't.
fear. Don't read those things. It's bad for you.
That's right. And so, this is why I get a kick. I mean, I understand it. Boy, parents get crazed. Okay, I don't want my kid to read this book. So about he's going to read this book about homosexuality or has homosexual
And then you're
character.
gonna be gay from reading it.
Yeah, sure. Oh, it's going to make my kid
Yeah,
gay.
yeah.
Excuse me. Excuse me. I read books involving homosexuals when I was a
You
young
have
person.
no interest in that.
It certainly didn't. It certainly didn't make me gay.
No, no, not at all.
Now,
You
and
are who you are.
well, I'm glad you said that because you know what? I had, we had a number of gay colleagues. I had gay colleagues on school. You probably even who they were, but I had talks with many of them, male and female,
Hmm.
and they all said the same thing to me. And I
Hmm.
knew it was true for me as I always called myself a flaming heterosexual because they used to talk about flaming homosexuals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I said I'm a flaming heterosexual.
That's
But
awesome.
they all told me that somewhere around the ages of like 5 or 6, they
Hmm.
kind of knew
Oh,
that
uh,
they were attracted to people of the same sex.
wow, that early.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm,
And I've heard it, and I from reading texts in psychology and stuff, and sociology, they say that is quite true. They know early on,
yeah,
and then the biggest problem that they have is hiding it from everybody, especially their parents.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so uh, that to me, and this is why I understand kind of the problem for parents is they have this notion that if they read about it, they'll become it. God, and then of course, oh, we can't have them reading books that are quote
yeah,
obscene unquote
yeah.
because there's sex in it. Like they're gonna
They're gonna
want to
become a
do it.
sexaholic just by reading that.
But my point of that is, kids are sexy
Mhm.
from day one. In
Yeah.
fact, I'll
Mhm.
never. One of the first things I learned in my reading psychology texts and stuff
Mhm.
was about how infants masturbate in the crib.
Really?
Infants, yes.
Oh,
How about
really?
that for a little factoid? Okay.
Wow.
Yes, they're rubbing up against whatever and in the
Mm.
bed, whatever. I mean, I'm not making this up either. Okay.
Because if it
So,
feels good, they're just gonna do it. Like they don't know.
that's the famous phrase. If it feels good, do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the issue, but though for me as an teacher of young people and other people's children, is again, if it feels good, you're going to want to do it, but you got to do it responsibly.
Yeah.
You've got to do
Responsibly,
it
safely.
discreetly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
One of the great books to read about was from a British teacher from 1918, 1920s was a guy named oh God, O'Neill. It was a book called Summerhill,
Mhm.
and he opened up a school. It was a very progressive school,
Yeah.
and he was really radical. And he said, "Well, we don't teach kids reading. In other words, when they want to read, they will learn to read."
What?
So, yes, in other words, they had books and stuff, but there was a whole thing where, well, we don't press it. They want to read something. If they're interested in something, like I
Yeah.
was always interested in horses, okay?
Yeah.
But that would mean, okay, gee, uh, hey, look, that book's about horses. I want to read it.
Yeah.
So then they'd say, okay, well, now sure. And
Now
of
you
course,
can. Oh,
yeah, I know
wow.
what and the phrases in education schools was quote reading readiness. They still talk. They used to talk about that years ago. There was a
Wow.
time when young people are ready to read, ready to, and they want to read. Okay,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
usually, like with my case, I had a real interest in horses
Yeah.
again around
Mhm.
5 years old. So as soon as I knew what a horse was, I was into horses.
You knew, you knew.
Right. So this whole, but this whole idea is the fact that, and of course the other thing they would talk about was when they had these kids who were at the age when they were starting to appreciate masturbation. Okay.
Understand their sexuality.
Yeah, and the rule was because I think it was also a boarding school,
Hmm.
um, and he would say, "Oh, look, masturbation is fine, but you know just do it in private. In other
Yeah.
words, you know
Hmm.
whatever it's not no
Oh,
public display."
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Now that those are radical. Those were and still are radical notions.
yeah.
Okay. So, uh, but I think that the issue of control, you it's either parental control or governmental control.
Yeah, population control.
Well, that too, but now you see, it's another story
Yeah.
about about. I want to keep I want to keep the
Yeah,
book
yeah.
to the books and censorship right now if I
Danny,
can.
yeah, yeah.
But the problem is, and I think what was his name? The guy who wrote the book was something O'Neill. I forget his first initials. But the whole thing about trying to censor books and or censor certain kinds of areas of information.
Yeah.
Um, and this is something, I learned in school a long time ago. You can't kill an idea. Ideas are going to flourish whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And parents don't seem to understand that half the time. And
Yeah.
teachers sometimes forget, even though teachers are teaching about ideas,
Mhm.
there are certain ideas they don't really want their students, or they don't want to deal with certain ideals with students. How about that? You say?
Yeah.
I once had a conversation with one of the teachers who taught seniors in my department. And I was saying like, yeah, I do certain kinds of literature, blah blah blah, and it involves, and especially in world literature.
Yeah.
I was once told by my seminar teacher in education, my education course is I guess it was a graduate school. Yeah, I think it was a graduate school, and he was a very courtly old gentleman, had been a superintendent
Mhm.
of one school district, and he told us totally useless information. Gentlemen, you should be wearing a jacket and tie every day, in
Uh-huh.
class. Never use foul language, with which I agree. I never used foul language in class. No, that was unprofessional. Okay, I
Yeah.
felt. And don't use slang.
Mhm.
And oh yeah, and don't ever talk about religion, politics, or sex.
Okay.
So now here I am. So here I am, my first year
Hmm.
teaching honors seniors at Central ISA. And of course,
You're talking
um,
about all of those things, right?
yeah, because the classical world literature is all
And
about
that has
sex.
all of it. Yeah, it has all of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Now here's another thing. And so, I mean, for example, how do you teach Dante's Inferno
Yeah.
if you don't talk about sex and politics and religion? And you just might as well take the book, chuck it in the wastebasket, and go have your kids read a comic book.
Yeah.
Let's read Superman. What's the new issue of Superman? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
But but again, going back to the textbook thing
Yeah.
with Texas and other states, by the way,
Hmm.
the way I got at it, the way I circumvented that was I used all paperback editions, the same editions that I read in college, paperback editions.
Hmm.
I said no. There was a textbook, okay,
Yeah.
and the textbook I hated it. It was this thick book with
Yeah.
short excerpts. I mean, for example, for Dante's Inferno, I think they had a half a canto in there, a half a,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
thinking, wait a second.
You're like, no, we need the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, what is this? And then, of course, so would be this gigantic blur
Yeah.
of authors' names, okay,
Hmm.
and a snippet of their work, and then he was
Yeah.
supposed to talk about it.
Oh,
I found that I just found that unacceptable to me.
yeah.
So I was able because with a lot of wheedling and a lot of manipulating and a lot of cursing and moaning,
Yeah.
I was able to get enough
Well,
budget money to buy the books, buy the
for,
individual
for
books.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about it, you had paperback editions of the world literature classics. So
Yeah.
Dante's Inferno by
Yeah.
John Chardy was one of them.
Mhm.
Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. Those are all you read the book.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's another story about I knew my students weren't always reading those books, but my lectures were designed that anybody who walked into the room off the street,
Mhm.
okay, who didn't read the book,
Yeah.
they could join in the discussion, in the conversation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Give you another per example, something that people don't like to talk about in this country. Um, Legalize prostitution. Okay.
Which has been around forever.
Well, in certain countries, it's been legal.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was even illegal here in certain territories and things like that. But anyway, um, uh, so, and this goes to show you when you teach long enough and you teach the same book, students will ask the same questions. So
Mhm.
you're always prepared, like,
Yeah. You're like,
like
I got it.
yeah, you could have missed your usual dosage of caffeine in the morning, but
Yeah.
when they ask the question, you'll have
Mhm.
the answer, right?
Yeah.
So here it was, classic, Crime and Punishment.
Mhm.
In that particular book, okay, Sonia is she's kind of poor and stuff like that, and she's but a very devout Christian, okay, and Raskolnikov is he's basically the protagonist who kills. He does a double axe murder. He kills a woman who he feels deserves killing. But right, what happened was that the sister is retarded, so he kills this innocent and retarded girl, right? So it's a double axe murder, and but the point is, Sonia, in order to live, was doing was a prostitute, and so but in Russia at the time it was legalized, but they had to have a license. Okay, so there comes the first time they mention it, whatever part of the book, early in the book, it says that Sonia has her yellow ticket. So always a student would say, raise his or her hand and say, "What's the yellow ticket?" Okay, and it was her license
The
to be a
license to
prostitute.
be a legal prostitute. Yeah.
And then I would say, "So what do you guys think about legalized prostitution?" Okay,
Uh-oh.
now, this is a class of seniors. They're 16 to 18 years old, 16 to
Yeah.
19.
Yeah.
But my point is, if some homeless guy walked in off the street,
Yeah.
preferably showered and shaved,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
walked into the room, he could engage in that
In that
conversation.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
because yeah.
yeah. Now, for example, I make a difference between discussion and conversation. Discussions are supposed to be a little more, coherent and kind of organized,
Yeah.
but discussions are much more loosey goosey. It's like you, me, and a couple of
Yeah.
friends of ours
Having having a conversation about things.
and I much preferred conversations. I
Yeah,
used to tell student teachers, don't have discussions, have conversations with your students
conversations. Yeah.
about literature.
Mhm.
But my point is that that's a topic that, for example, going back to this one English teacher that was talking
Yeah.
about seniors,
Mhm.
and she goes, "Well, I never talk about sex in the classroom."
I don't think anybody talked about sex ever
Really?
besides you.
Well, you know why, Linda? You laugh, but again, who's the flaming heterosexual
I
here?
mean, well, that's what I mean. Like, no, I don't think any adult was comfortable enough to be able to talk to their students in general, or any adult usually, because they feel like it's, I don't know, maybe they're not comfortable to be like, okay, well, sex is a normal thing, and you need, as long if you do it, be responsible, be
Yeah,
safe.
but
As long as you talk
but
it
but
that way, then it's
here's the
okay.
problem. Here's the hypocrisy with that.
Yeah.
Parents would complain years ago, like when they were talking about having sex education in schools. I may have mentioned this in another podcast. I don't remember. But the fact of it is, they would say, "Well, we're responsible for teaching the kids those things." Blah 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 blah. Okay.
Hmm.
The fact of the matter is that they don't do it. See, by the time they do it, it's too
Yeah.
late.
It's too late.
Kids
Yeah.
are 16, 17.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they've been masturbating since they've been 12, 13,
Or
14.
infant in the crib.
Yeah, the infant in the crib, right? Go back. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is
Yeah.
that they're not upholding their responsibility. So then it falls to adults, uh, responsible adults. I'm
Yeah.
calling myself a
Yeah.
responsible adult.
Yeah.
It falls to the responsible adults to say to young people, or give them the information,
Yeah.
or give them the direction to find the information
Yeah. Give them the
about
truth.
about their burdening sexuality. I
Yeah.
mean, part of being a teenager is that you're trying to find, that's what the word means, adolescent. Adolescent, it means an adult. I mean, adolescent means a burgeoning, a beginning, the essence part,
Yeah.
the birthing of, or the beginning of adult, being an
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
So in terms of finding one's identity, students need as much information that they can get
We need the
to,
truth. And like even when me and my kids are watching certain TV shows and
uh-huh.
there's certain topics that come on, and my kids will ask me, well, what does that mean? I was like, well, do you want to know the truth? 'Cause, I mean, I was like, I'll tell you the truth of it. And they're like, I think the first couple of times they're like, yeah, tell me the truth. But then now they know, like, I'm going to tell you exactly the truth. So you have to be ready to hear it.
Yeah, but
You know?
it's funny. I mean, and sometimes, you know, like, so, I mean, look, and sometimes parents too, they don't understand that what their kids are at. Sometimes kids will say, like, one of the classic jokes is that a kid will say, well, gee, mom, well, dad, where did I come from? And of course, right away, the father starts to get, stammer and blush, and because he goes, oh, this kid's gonna, I have to give the kid the talk,
Yeah.
and the kid might be 7 or 8,
Yeah.
and he goes, no, where did I come from? And the kid went, and then the real answer that the kid wanted to know was Brooklyn. In other words, you know, where did I come from? Because like me,
Yeah.
we moved out to Long Island,
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
County. I was born in Brooklyn,
That's
you know,
funny. So
but
they just
that,
wanted a simple answer.
because the kids at certain ages, they're very direct,
Yeah.
okay, and
Yeah.
what they hear, they hear very directly. So, for example, the kid will say, um, the mother will say, "I just baked these fresh cookies, okay? Don't let me catch you stealing any of these cookies." Okay, before dinner or dessert.
Obviously, you're going to
So what
want
is the
that
kid?
cookie.
Yeah, here's what the kid is hearing. Okay, don't let me. She doesn't want to catch me stealing the cookies.
Yeah. So I'll sneak it.
But I can take the cookies if she doesn't catch me. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
other words-
Yeah.
So in other words, I can
Mhm.
have the cookies, but I can't get caught stealing them or
Yeah.
taking them when I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to. That's what they're
Mhm.
hearing. And I
Mhm.
remember one of my psychology professors talking about that. And I'm going, this is one of the reasons why you have to be really careful about what you say to young kids.
Yeah.
Older kids, like when you were a teenager,
Yeah.
it's a little different story because you could put 2 and 2 together and not
Mm.
come up with 5. You come up
Yeah.
with 4. But but I think that uh, the fact that parents are concerned is really about their control issues because
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Control. Yeah.
they can't control too much. They really
Yeah.
feel that they if they can probably say, well, I can control what the teacher says, or I
Yeah.
can control what the school librarian puts on the shelves. But because they realize that, well, most of the times with their kids, they really have very little control.
You don't have control because they're going to turn out to be whoever they're going to be.
Now remember, years ago, even though I wasn't a parent, uh, but I kind of knew from my own life experience. I
Hmm.
used to tell young young parents, uh, friends, and whomever. I said, look, you have to inculcate into your children all the moral values that you have and you want them to believe in terms of honesty and integrity and blah blah blah. And you got to do it before they're like 12, okay?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
after 12,
It's
you are
over.
no longer important. Their peers
Uh-oh.
are more, yeah, right?
Oh, no,
Their
I have one more year.
Yes, yes.
That's it. It's
No, but
over.
that's true because the peer, your is it a son or daughter?
Both. Well, my son is 11 and my daughter is 12.
Oh, please,
Uh,
absolutely.
so
If
I think it's probably over already, I think.
Yeah, because you know what happens? Their peers become more important. What their
Hmm.
peers have to say becomes more
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And this is the other issue that I used to fight against as an instructor is peer pressure. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, peer pressure is just like, peer pressure is really groupthink. You got
Hmm.
yours, you want to be part of the herd,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And because human beings are herd animals, and this is
Yeah.
the whole, yeah.
You end
But
up you are, I mean, they always say, you are who you're, hanging out with, your 5 friends or 6 friends that you're
sure,
around all the
sure.
time, and the amount of salary that you're going to have is the amount of salary of all the people that you have around you too, because
That's
you
right.
just act like the same and do the same thing.
Yeah, I look to get students to to fight peer pressure was a big issue
Mhm.
for me personally, because I
Mhm.
just felt, again, it goes back to what did I want to help create? I wanted to help
Yeah.
create individuals.
Yeah.
And you can't be an individual if you've decided to become a sheep and you're following the herd,
Yeah.
and not all herds are equal, you know?
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's one of the biggest things, and of course, all these politicians, all these, especially the conservatives, what they're trying to do is make people into sheep to believe any horse
Yeah.
poop that they can get them to believe.
And
And
controlling the books that are going out there.
yeah, I mean, um, for example, like I remember teaching African American lit. I was pretty open about racism. Okay, now this whole argument about critical race theory to me is a laugher, right?
Mhm.
You guys in Central Islip lived the critical race theory. You knew about structural